Welcome to Haunting History, the podcast that reaches back into the past for the events that shocked everyone. Tales of true crime, mystery, and the macabre. And when we're lucky, the stories where history and the people who lived it and the paranormal meet. Now, who doesn't love a good ghost story, right? Welcome back to Haunting History Podcast. I'm Kat, your host, and here we are at Season 1, Episode 6. And today joining me is Tressa. Hi, Tressa.
Hello.
I can't believe that we're already at Episode 6.
No, that was wet. That went really fast.
It did go really fast. And we can't do a podcast on haunted locations in Southern California without talking about the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. Once called the Hollywood Memorial Park, it's one of the oldest cemeteries in Los Angeles and has all the elements that we at Haunting History Podcast love. It's history, it has true crime, and best of all, it's haunted. Have you ever been, Tress?
I have not been there, but I think I'm probably going to want to go there after this episode.
A little field trip. It's really kind of amazing. I've been going there for years.
I think I drove by it. It has like really pretty gates. It's downtown, right?
No, it's right. If you got off the freeway at Santa Monica, you passed it.
I feel like I've seen a very big...
It's not big. It's not big from the front. The front of it is actually really small.
But it's where like small. All the celebrities are buried,
the celebrities,
right?
The old Hollywood.
Okay.
So
I was downtown, or I was somewhere in LA at one point, and somebody had recently died, and it was a big deal, and I think I drove past it while they were like going in. It has like really big gates.
It has a beautiful gate, but it's not. It's just a driveway.
Okay.
And there's a reason why it wasn't originally like that. Normally, you drive past cemeteries and you can see like the lawn and all this. You really can't there.
Yeah.
There's the gates, and on one side of the gates is the chapel, which is still standing, an original chapel from 1899. And then on the other side is the Elks Lodge, which is a brick building. Just on either side of the gates, there's the chapel and then the Elks building, which is beautiful. It's really old, too. I mean,
I feel like I've seen this.
Creepy.
Because I remember big stone buildings.
Yeah, right on either side of it. But as far as...
But you really couldn't see inside.
No, and as far as the cemetery goes, it doesn't... You don't drive past it and automatically know, oh, that's a cemetery. I mean, other than the sign out front, which has changed numerous times. It's the final resting place for tons of the golden age of Hollywood, as well as people who played vital roles in the shaping of Los Angeles. It's located at 6000 Santa Monica Boulevard at the Hollywood district of Los Angeles near the corner of Gower. Once known, Gower Street is the other street on the side of the cemetery. Gower Gulch, just a little tidbit of information. Gower used to be called, or better known as Gower Gulch. It was where all the extras during the Western era, when they did all the Western movies, the silent Western movies, and even into the 20s when they were doing the Western films, all the extras would line up on Gower Street, dressed in all their Western clothes, waiting to be called as an extra for the day. So they called the street Gower Gulch. And really weirdly, it's because where the cemetery is on Santa Monica, and it's bordered on one side by Gower, and behind it, I always say behind it, which I don't know if that's logistically correct, is Paramount Studios.
Then yes, this is what I have been to.
You have been by that?
Yes, because I've gone to some filmings of some shows. And
in Paramount Studios. It's connected to the back wall. There's only a wall.
Yeah.
The Paramount Studios borders the back end of it, and Gower borders the side of it. And so the extras that were filming for the day, or wanted to be paid for the day, would gather on Gower Street. And so you would drive down Gower Street, and they would be dressed in Western gear, and then during the musical era, it would be people dressed in dance clothes, and then during, the different eras, the street changed because...
Is it zombies now?
No, but it's a really cool, you can feel the history just driving down Gower. There's nothing in LA that's super nice. I mean, well, Beverly Hills or Rodeo Drive, but in that area between Hollywood and Vine and Santa Monica and Melrose, where Paramount Studios is off the 101 freeway, it's not a nice area.
No.
It's all the stores have gates on the windows and
garages that pull down, garage doors.
Right, yeah, it's not nice, but I make everyone get off at Melrose off the 101 freeway, and then you drive past Paramount Studios, so you can see the big giant gates of Paramount Studios, which is always majestic and cool, and then you make a right on Gower, and you really can just feel the history there. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's a cemetery that gets to me, I don't know, but I always take people there. The cemetery was founded in 1899 as a Hollywood cemetery. It was later known as Hollywood Memorial Park, and then in 1998, like I said earlier, it was given its current name, which is Hollywood Forever Cemetery.
When it was first founded, was it only for celebrities or...
No, 1899, the studios weren't even part of...
Oh, true.
They owned the land that Paramount Studios and the former RKO Studios, which was on the other corner, they sold them the land. Okay. The original owners, the founders of the Hollywood Cemetery were two men, Isaac Linkersham and his son-in-law, Isaac Van Nuys. Those names sound familiar? No. City of Van Nuys, yeah. Linkersham Boulevard. Yeah, they were the two founders of it, and they, again, recognizable names in Los Angeles. In 1897, they bought 60 acres of land near Hollywood in the Los Angeles County, and that year, along with M.W. Gardner of Santa Monica, Joseph Rodford, Gilbert Smith, and Thomas Wallace, formed a corporation known as Hollywood Cemetery Association. The cemetery sold off large tracts to Paramount Pictures, which is still standing, and RKO Pictures, which is long gone. They each bought 40 acres in 1920. So, I mean, there were no interments there yet. They had just started the Hollywood Cemetery Association, so there weren't interments on that land, but they sold the land that became Paramount Studios and RKO Studios, but originally it was part of that land. Part of the remaining land was set aside as a Beth Olam Cemetery, which was a dedicated Jewish burial ground for members of the local Jewish community. From 1899 to 1937, the cemetery moved along quietly, becoming the final resting place for silent movie stars and the movers and shakers of the film industry, which didn't start until like 19... I don't know. 30? Before that. Silent films were before that. 1915. Okay. In 1937, Jules Roth, a convicted felon and millionaire...
Was he any relation to the Roths that people may know nowadays?
No. He was a shady character. And just a horrible human being, as we'll find out as we go along. But he came out of San Quentin State Prison in, as much as he's shady shit, what I call him shady shit, he, kind of impressive for being a con artist. He and his business partner had run up like all these different scams and found out the police were following them and trying to catch them. His boss was C.C. Julian. They ran from the authorities. Roth was wanted on 39 counts, including grand theft and securities violation. They fled to Canada using a fake name. He was finally arrested in Winnipeg, and at his court hearing, he snuck out a door reserved for jurors and disappeared. Like, I mean, you gotta hashtag respect. I mean, he was a shit and a horrible human being, but he just walked out the door, and no one stopped him.
Aren't most con artists?
He knew what he was doing.
Good.
Yeah, for sure.
Doing stuff.
He was later found in New York and arrested again and extradited to Los Angeles. After a 1-month trial, he was convicted on 21 counts and sentenced to 9 to 95 years in San Quentin. And this is where the whole Ancestry.com thing comes in. If you look him up on Ancestry.com, you can go to his prison files, and then this is where I lost it for, 3 hours of my life. When you go to the prison files, they have the book scanned online of all the convicts that were in San Quentin. And each page has the person's mugshot, their name, their description, and what they did when they were received at San Quentin, when they were paroled at San Quentin, and when they were discharged. All handwritten.
Oh, wow.
I couldn't stop looking. I could not stop looking. I was looking at every... I finally found him on the page that I was looking for, but then I don't know how many hours I sat there.
You got lost.
I got lost. Again, Ancestry will get me every single time. What's really funny about his page, though, like it has for every person, like burglary, 2 counts robbery, whatever, his just kept saying, see yellow page, like on everything that you looked at. He had, 39 counts?
See the yellow page?
Well, I finally found, we had 39 counts. Yeah. So it wouldn't fit in the book that they handwrite at San Quentin. I don't know why I was so fascinated by that. Would you have done that too? Would you get sucked into that?
Probably.
It's I have the morbidest personality. I mean, clearly I like the whole morbid and macabre thing. But just looking at the pictures, the little mugshots of all the crazy felons, and it being so old.
Yeah. That's what's interesting.
You can go back to the 1800s. Yeah, it sucks.
So he was sentenced to 1 to 99 years?
1 to 95 years.
95
But
years.
Clearly he only did less than 2.
Who decides when you get out?
Oh, you get paroled for good behavior or whatever. Oh, yeah. He got paroled in 2 years. I mean, it was white-collar crimes, so they call it white-collar crimes. He wasn't...
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, he wasn't breaking and entering into houses or anything, so...
Yeah, he wasn't physically hurting people.
No, he got out, and when he got out of San Quentin, he met the woman who was the daughter of the cemetery superintendent at the Hollywood Cemetery. And because of the stock market crash, was just, 10 years before that, people who had bought into the cemetery really were quick to sell. Nobody wanted... They needed... 10 years later, people still hadn't remade their money and needed money. So through this cemetery superintendent, the daughter, he went to Hollywood Cemetery. His parents are buried there. So he was there. He met the superintendent's daughter, found out a bunch of people wanted to sell their stake in the cemetery. He ended up being, I don't know how he kept his money while he was in prison, but he kept his money.
He was probably hiding it.
Well, clearly, he knew what he was doing. He ended up buying a 51% stake in the cemetery. So he basically owned the cemetery and ran the cemetery.
Majority owner.
Yeah, in 1939. He immediately used the money from the cemetery's operations to pay for his own personal luxuries. I mean, he was shady right on the spot. He didn't put any money into cemetery upkeep. He sold plots that weren't available. He did like this whole thing where he would sell plots to people who were young, weren't dying anytime soon. Basically immediately started running it into the ground. It operated on its own from 1940 to 1952. And then 1952, the suckiest thing happened, and it's so our history.
He still owned it in 1952?
He owned it until 1998.
Oh.
Yeah, a long 1939 to 1998. In 1952, and this is one of the sadder stories about the cemetery, is Hattie McDaniel. Do you know who Hattie McDaniel is? Mm-mm. She played Mammy in Gone with the Wind. You never watched Gone. She was the first African American to win an Academy Award at the 1940 Academy Awards. Nice. She was an actress. She played. She was the best role in Gone with the Wind. I mean, she was amazing. But this is a really sad story about her, though. And she went through a life. I mean, she died in 1952. So segregation was still going on in the 20s and 30s. In fact, when she went to the Academy Award, I read a lot about her when I found out this story and attached it to the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. At the Academy Awards, where she won an Academy Award, they had to make an allowance for her to be in the hotel because it was still segregated. Oh. So she had to sit at a table at the very back of the room, not knowing she was going to win the Academy Award.
How sad.
I know. Well, it gets sadder. In 1952, when she died, the actress, better known as playing Mammy in Gone with the Wind, and for being the first African-American to win an Academy Award, she, in her will, wrote, and I quote, unquote, "I desire a white casket and a white shroud, white gardenias in my hair and in my hands, together with a white gardenia blanket and a pillow of red roses. I also wish to be buried in the Hollywood Cemetery." But Jules Roth wouldn't allow it. The cemetery was still segregated in 1952. I don't think that we understand that.
No.
We can't.
I can't wrap my head
can't even fathom it and understand.
Someone could even have the right to say where you're buried.
Yeah.
If you buy a plot, you buy a plot.
It was still segregated, and he refused, even with public pressure, refused to let her be buried there. Wow. I can't. I can't wrap my... But that's what a shady shit he was. He was a horrible human being, and then he just aggravated it and made himself...
He was just a jerk off.
Yeah, he was just horrible. He wouldn't allow it. The cemetery at the time was segregated, and he wouldn't budge. I don't know if he had any redeeming qualities. He continued to spend his money, any of the money coming into the cemetery, on his own personal desires rather than keep up the grounds. And then this is how bad it got. In 1974, the crematory had to be shut down after singer Cass Elliot was cremated. Do you know who Cass Elliot is? I'm talking to a podcast generation, and people won't even know who Hattie McDaniel is or Cass Elliot. She was a singer from the Mamas and Papas.
I know my parents had a Mamas and Papas
album.
Record.
Yeah.
I don't know who that is.
She was being cremated, and this comes from the supervisor of the crematory. While she was being cremated, bricks were falling in to the crematorium because he never paid for any upkeep on the cemetery. So they shut the crematory down for 28 years. It wasn't reopened. Yeah, well, he didn't do anything until someone else took over in 1998, but the whole time he owned it, there was no crematory there, which is unheard of. But they couldn't, because it was going to fall down and kill someone who was still alive, as opposed to killing someone who was dead. By the 1980s, the California Cemetery Board began receiving regular complaints from families who were interred there. Family members complained that the grounds were not kept up and were disturbed to hear stories about vandalism. Like, they didn't even do anything to protect it from vandalism. A well-known makeup artist, now you know who Max Factor is.
I didn't know that was a person.
Oh, yeah! The Max Factor, his name, Max Factor, really? Yeah. The Max Factor family, who was interred in the Beth Olam Mausoleum in 1938. So this happened in 1980s. He died in 1938. The family went in and wanted his remains moved because the cemetery was so decrepit. Yeah. It was falling apart. Yeah. In 1986, 1,000 plot owners filed a class action lawsuit against the cemetery for invasion of privacy after they discovered that Roth was allowing people to pay from Paramount Studios to park in the cemetery. They would just park right over the graves and then walk to Paramount Studios. Can you believe that? He was just a gross human being. He just did not care. He, in the late 1980s... What
about the people that were parking there? When I go to a cemetery, I try to walk between lines, like you don't walk over.
They were just as bad, but the fact that he would sell that, though. He owned a cemetery.
People would park there.
I mean, yeah. I don't know who's worse. They're both pretty bad. He, in the late 1980s, he had to settle some tax bills, which I don't know he had tax bills because he lied about everything. But he wanted to maintain his lifestyle, so he sold 2 of the lawns in the front. This is what I was talking about, how the front used to be much bigger. You could, from the street, you could see the gates and into the cemetery, which is normal. When you drive past a cemetery, you know that's a cemetery. Yeah. I don't feel like you do there because it's really just the gates and then the buildings on each side. He sold the plots at the front of 3 acres in the front on Santa Monica Boulevard. It's now like a laundromat and a liquor store and a garage, like some kind of repair garage or something. But that's what blocks your view from it being a cemetery. It was reported the property was paid for in cash. Someone bought that for cash, so that was another way for him to swindle his money. Those lawns are now strip malls that house, among other business, an auto parts store and a laundromat. During this time, an employee reported Roth to the IRS because Roth. We should call him Roth.
Roth.
Yeah, he bought a yacht saying that he needed it to scatter the ashes of the clients who paid for that portion of their burial. But he was using it just for women and entertainment. Nice. He wasn't using it for that at all. He was just all around slimy. He terrorized his employees. He paid someone to spy on his employees. All kinds of crazy. Just gross. The cemetery continued to fall in disrepair. Headstones and crypts were crumbling. The lawns were not maintained. Buildings and tiles were falling apart. And then in 1994, the Northridge earthquake happened, which did further damage. Now, this is really creepy. After the Northridge earthquake, the ground had moved and settled. So crypt doors were just hanging open.
Oh, weird.
Crypt doors had, crumbled and fallen aside. So, one day you're there, the next day you go, and all the crypts are open. And, things had fallen off. Really, 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 really in disrepair. Yeah. So, people didn't want their family members in there anymore. The interments had dropped so significantly that most years they made more money charging families the $500 to move bodies, to, dig people up and pull the, marble off the front of their wall things. They made more money moving people out of there than they did actually burying people there. By 1998, at the age of 97, Jules Roth died. Which when I say that he got it back in the end, he really didn't. He was already dead. But he was so decrepit the last, 6 months of his life. He had fallen in his home. The people that cared for him, his nurse and his manager, completely changed his will to only include them and got him to sign it and stuff. So no family members got any money. I know, but did he care? He was dead. I don't feel that was that. It wasn't good enough karma for him, I don't think.
Why didn't he get Jolly Jane as a nurse?
I know, right? That would have been helpful. After his death, it was discovered that the Cemetery Endowment Fund, which was meant to keep the cemetery going and taken care of, was missing $9 million. He had spent $9 million that people had paid to keep the cemetery safe and looking right. Tyler
That's part of what you pay when you buy a plot? Or do you have to, pay monthly?
Oh, no, you don't pay monthly. I don't know anyone who pays monthly. When you buy it, part of that goes to the perpetuity of the cemetery, the upkeep of the cemetery. So that money was gone. It wasn't money that was ever supposed to go anywhere else but into an endowment fund to maintain the cemetery. So that, I mean, because you eventually die, your family eventually dies, people who cared about you eventually die too. So the only way to keep, like, where your remains are nice is to have that fund. And so everyone pays into that fund to keep it. Well, he stole every single dime of it. Wow. $9 million. Tyler and Brent Cassidy purchased in 1998. They purchased it was now only 62 acres, on the verge of bankruptcy for, guess how much they bought it for? In Hollywood, Los Angeles, California.
How much?
62 acres. $375,000.
You can't even buy a one-bedroom house.
You can't buy a condo for that. I know.
No, yeah.
You really can't buy a one-bedroom condo in California for $375,000.
I was just looking them up, and I sold my condo, 4 years ago, and made a decent amount of money on it. They're going for $375,000. Yeah. 900 square feet.
Yeah, 900. And they
bought an apartment. It's not a condo. No garage.
Yeah. Just a one bedroom. Yeah. They ended up buying it for $375,000. They initially, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to think bad. One of the brothers still owns it to this day. I don't want to think bad of them. They ultimately being bad guys too. I don't know what it is about this property, but they renamed the cemetery Holly Forever. They set out to completely make it over, restore it, refurbish it. They put memorial, I don't know what they're called, but like TVs where you could watch memorials. People could create memorials for their loved ones. Yeah. So like you can watch one on Rudolph Valentino and Cecil B. DeMille and all the old movie stars are all in there. They had found out about Hattie McDaniel not being able to be buried there. So they had a statue in her honor put there. I mean, it's nice, but I mean, her remains are not there because she couldn't be buried there. So yeah. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's good. But then in 1910, Brett Cassidy, one of the brothers, 1910, why do I do that all the time? In 2010, see, I just want to be in history all the time. In 2010, Brett Cassidy, the brother, there was two brothers that bought it, Tyler and Brett. But in 2010, Brett Cassidy and his father, along with several others, were indicted for running a Ponzi-like scheme, stealing hundreds of millions of dollars from pre-need funeral contracts. So, what is it about? Researching this?
Well, if you think about it, you're getting all this money up front and not having to deliver a product.
And the product is already there. It's not you have to do anything.
But you don't have to make something.
You're not making anything.
You don't have to deliver until they die.
Yeah.
So it's a very easy way to get greedy. And if this is a cemetery, I know you don't believe.
I don't believe that.
Cemeteries are haunted?
I don't.
You want me to say that?
Yeah.
I know that you don't believe cemeteries are haunted, but
no, I don't.
I do.
I know you do, and I don't know that I agree when it comes to this place.
What energies are getting a hold of these people who have access to all this money and control, and they can just
I don't know.
They probably think they'll be able to replace it.
So not a lot changed from Roth to the current owners as far as like shady business, because clearly the cemetery business, I didn't know until I started researching this how shady the funeral business was. But the Cassidys did rebuild. They refurbished the cemetery. It does look better than it ever did. One of the things that people talk about today, and this is where we're going to get into like the haunted part of the cemetery. One of the things that people talk about today is the Lady in Black. Have you ever heard of that?
Mm-mm. I haven't heard anything about this cemetery.
You know who Rudolph Valentino is? Rudolph Valentino. You've heard that name before.
Was he an actor? No.
Well, yeah.
Yes? Oh.
Yeah.
What movies?
1920s.
I don't know.
I could name off the movies all you want. You would not know who they are. The Sheik was one of them.
No.
One of the things that people still talk about today at the cemetery is the Lady in Black. Have you heard?
I don't think so.
No? Back in the 1920s, have you heard of Rudolph Valentino?
The name sounds familiar. I know I should know who it is, but...
Well, I do, because I'm
in...
Yes,
okay.
He was an actor. He, back in the 1920s, Rudolph Valentino was considered a pop icon. Like the stars of today. He was a silent movie star.
Okay, I think I know.
About which? The Lady in Black?
I'm going to go back to another TV show.
What?
American Horror Story.
Did they do
had a Lady in Black, and it was a movie star that she would go and visit the cemetery and put a red rose
there you
on
go. His crypt.
Yeah, his crypt.
Yeah, his wall crypt.
Every day.
Yeah, and that was in what?
American Horror Story.
I need to watch that.
Come on.
I do. But
she would turn out to be a vampire, so.
Oh, she did?
Yeah.
It's not a vampire story. Back in the 1920s, Rudolph Valentino, a pop icon, was a sex symbol who was known as a Latin lover or simply Valentino. His premature death at the age of 31 caused mass hysteria among female fans and further propelled him to iconic status. On August 15th in 1926, Valentino collapsed at the Hotel Ambassador on Park Avenue in Manhattan. He was hospitalized in New York's Polyclinic Hospital. Following an examination, he was diagnosed of having appendicitis and gastric ulcers. Surgery was performed immediately. His condition is now referred to as Valentino syndrome. He had a perforated ulcer that mimicked appendicitis. After surgery, Valentino developed periodontitis. Do you know what periodontitis is?
No.
I kind of want to look it up. Periodontitis, I believe, is after, it's like an infection of... Periodontitis is an inflammation of the silk-like membrane that lines your inner abdominal wall and then covers your organs within your abdomen. It's usually due to a bacterial or fungal infection, so it's an infection.
He got that from the surgery? After
the surgery, yeah. And it says, on August 18th, his doctors were optimistic about his prognosis. The media was told that unless Valentino's condition deteriorated, no further updates would be given. However, his condition worsened on August 21st. He was stricken with a severe relapse, which was of pleuritis, and inflammation of the membranes that surround the lungs and line the chest cavity. It developed rapidly in his left lung due to his weakened condition, because he had the infection from his abdomen.
Yeah, so his body was shutting down.
Yeah. The doctors realized that Valentino was going to die, but as was common in the time, they chose to withhold the information, which I don't understand what that has to do. Reportedly believed that he would recover. He reportedly believed, this is so sad. He reportedly believed that he would recover. During the early hours of Monday, August 23rd, Valentino had briefly been conscious and chatted with his doctors about his future, but he soon lapsed into a coma and died a few hours later at the age of 31.
Oh.
I know.
But it seemed like it was an unnecessary surgery to begin with?
No, he had ruptured... No, he did.
Oh.
They thought it was appendicitis, but it was ruptured ulcers, which... Can you not fix that? I don't know. It's called Valentino's... they call it Valentino's syndrome because it's the bursted ulcers that mimic an appendicitis, so maybe it was something they didn't need to do and they opened him up to infection. Or the burst ulcers caused the infection, which ultimately killed him.
Yeah.
I know. Not a doctor. Barely a historian, so can't.
I thought you had a Google degree.
I do have a Google degree. I have an Ancestry.com degree.
And
a Find a Grave degree. Yeah.
An MD in Google.
I do.
Cancer.
I do. I have
Especially
everything.
Toe cancer.
I do have everything. I know. People are not... that's not... No. Well, it is normal to Google your symptoms and think you're dying. That isn't... Everybody does that. My abnormality is that if...
Someone else has a symptom, you now have it, and you are dying.
Yes, I can't watch... Yeah, that's not the normal part. At his funeral, an estimated 100,000 people... I can't get over... We're telling strangers that I'm a hypochondriac. At his funeral, an estimated 100,000 people lined the streets of Manhattan to pay their respects for his funeral. Suicides of despondent fans were reported. Girls killed themselves over him dying.
Wow.
Windows were smashed as fans tried to get in and out, and an all-day riot erupted on the 24th. Over 100 mounted officers from the NYPD's police reserve had to be deployed to restore order. Police officers lined the streets for the remainder of the viewing. Polish actress Pola Negri, claiming to be Valentino's fiancée, collapsed in hysterics while standing over his coffin. It was drama. It was drama beyond drama. And they didn't have, like, news crews and stuff like that back then. His funeral mass in Manhattan was held on Monday, the 30th of August. And afterwards, his remains were taken by train from New York to California. A second funeral was held on the West Coast at the Catholic Church of the Good Shepherd in Beverly Hills. Valentino had no final burial arrangements, but his friend, June Mathis, which I believe was his manager too, arranged a temporary solution when she offered a crypt that she had purchased for her husband that she had since divorced. Coincidentally, she died the following year and was interred in the adjoining crypt that she had purchased for herself. Valentino was never moved. They originally had this big plan to build an entire building just for him. Yeah, and it never came about because she died the year later.
Yeah.
He remains in the crypt next to June Mathis. The two people are still interred side by side at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery in Hollywood, California. Over the years, now this is the lady in black. Over the years, a woman in black carrying one red rose has come, just like
Just like
American Horror Stories. Over the years, a woman in black carrying a red rose has come to mourn at Valentino's crypt, usually on the anniversary of his death. Several myths surround the woman, though it seems the first woman in black was actually a publicity stunt cooked up by a press agent. A woman named Dietra Flame claimed to be the original woman in black, and then several copycats have followed over the years. Although originally a PR stunt has become a tradition, the current woman in black is motion picture historian Carrie Bible, who I think she does tours. I think she actually works for the cemetery and does tours. I actually have a story about the lady in black, though. When I used to be a Hollywood tour guide. Did I ever tell you that?
No.
I used to be a Hollywood tour guide. I used to take people to Hollywood all the time. And one of the stops was always the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. And I took older people. It wasn't usually like a young group of people that wanted to see newer stars. It was all people who knew.
Wanted to see the 20s?
Well, who wanted... I mean, they weren't necessarily older, but they knew who Valentino was, and they knew who Cecil B. DeMille was, and Marion Davies, and all that stuff. So we always went to the Forever. Back then... Well, 98. So it was Hollywood Forever by then. One time I took a group there, and they were filming something by the lake there. So it was a really busy day. It was kind of crazy. Usually when you go on a random Tuesday afternoon, it's not very many people there, even though it's very large. And I had taken this group there, and we had parked, and there were just tons of people miling around. And I was like, well, let's go all the way back to the back corner. I want to show you where Rudolph Valentino is interred. And I explained to them the whole Lady in Black story. And as we were walking up, there was a lady standing on the steps, dressed all in black. And her clothes were, like, torn, and she had, like, her hair was all ratted out. She looked homeless.
Yeah.
But she was head to toe dressed in black. And when we walked up, it was a couple of the grips for the filming. They were on a break for filming. I don't even know who was filming that day. But some of the people that were working on the set were walking up the steps with us, and we had kind of started chatting, and I was telling them about the lady in black, and they were like, take us with you and tell us the story. So they went with me, and we ran into this lady standing on the steps of the mausoleum, dressed all in black, and she stopped me and said, are you here to see my Rudy? And I was like, yeah, I am. And she goes, well, let me take you to my Rudy. And I said, well, how is he your Rudy? And I'm standing there. Mind you, I have probably 6 people on my tour. Plus there's 6 or 7 of the people from the filming that had heard me doing the tour that kind of like joined in. And so now she has this whole audience of people. Yeah. And she explains that when she was young, she was a young bride. She got married at 13. And her husband worked on Rudolph Valentino's movies. And during one of his movies, a set caught on fire, which I researched and found to be true, that one of his sets caught on fire and killed her husband. And Rudolph Valentino promised her that for the rest of her life, he would take care of her. So until he died, she would get a check in the mail every week for her husband's wages from Rudolph Valentino.
Always been the woman in black?
I don't know. Is that interesting, though? She was ancient. When I met her, she was ancient. So I did the math.
Yeah.
And I met her, it had to be... I don't remember. At the time I did the math to figure out, could she possibly have been alive during the time that this movie set? And it... Based on the fact that she was a child bride, yeah, it would have worked out.
Yeah.
Time-wise. And she took us over to his crypt. She led us over there and sang to him in Italian and lit a candle for him and showed us the red roses that she brought and said that she visited. I still, to this day, don't know if she was the lady in black or some crazy lady that happened to be there. Maybe she was there because of the filming. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, but my guests on my tour were thrilled.
It.
Yeah. It was fun. People today say that the cemetery that are there at the cemetery at night see a shadow of a lady in black going up the stairs and disappearing through the doors of the mausoleum. I was going to say, things like the lady in black that we met there, things like that have always happened to us when we're there. Something like that happens. One time I was there, and I was with a different group of people. These were much younger people, so they were more interested in, like, Joey Ramone is buried there, and Dee Dee Ramone. And we kind of separated. We were all just kind of roaming. And I walked up. There was a man standing at a woman's grave. And I looked at what grave he was looking at. And her birthday was the same as mine. And so for whatever reason, because I talked to everybody. And I said, oh, her birthday is the same as mine. Was that your wife? And she had just died. Like the it was within the last month or whatever her marker had said. And I ended up talking to him for like 30 minutes. We just sat on the bench by his wife's grave and we were talking about life and death, and how he was telling me that to make sure that I call my grandparents regularly because he and his wife paid for his grandchildren to go to private schools, but they never called him or anything. Mm-hmm. And they never came to
visit.
Yeah, and they never had been there to... He said that he had always wished that he would show up at the grave of his wife because he came like every day, and that there would be flowers there, that someone had come while he was gone and left her flowers, like one of his grandchildren or something. So we talked for a while, and he told me that he lived near Florence in Normandy, or off of, which is where the LA riots ultimately ended up being. Okay. And so I don't think he lived right there because he was a very well-to-do man, so he didn't live near there, but he lived, I don't know, we were talking about like the area and stuff. And so after he left, I went and met my friends, and we all went to the flower shop and bought flowers for her and went back and put it on her grave. Yeah. It was really,
If we go there, we should do that.
If I can find it again, it's right outside of Valentino's mausoleum, so it's right there. And the saddest thing is when I went back, had been a couple years later, there was a new grave right beside her.
Oh.
So I think But then another time we went, Haley and I were there to see, they did a showing. This is why I know what the Elks Lodge looks like. The inside of the Elks Lodge is really creepy. They were doing a showing of the Raven, and they had a medium there, and we were invited by the medium to go. And he was doing readings before the showing of the movie. It was just this whole Halloween thing that they were doing. And so after he had done his readings, we didn't want to stay and watch the movie. And they knew that I had done tours of the cemetery before. Mm-hmm. So he asked us he said, do you guys want to go walk around? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And this is the next story I'm going to tell you about Virginia Rappe. But I said, yeah, I want to go over by Virginia Rappe's grave. And I want to do like an EVP session or something. So we went over there, and he had what's called do you know what a Frank's box is?
Yes.
Wait, can you pull it up and tell?
Yeah.
I don't know if our listeners would know what a Frank's box is.
So a Frank's box is a device that is used for contacting spirits through the use of radio frequencies, or boxes. Mediums use it for direct communication.
They're kind of creepy because they spin through a radio dial, and then just individual words come out.
Yeah, and then the words come out, but then they can they go back and listen and can slow it down and like actually make it out a little better.
Right. So we took it.
EVP recorder.
Yeah, we took it over to where Virginia Rappe is, which is a story I will tell you next. And on the Frank's box, we kept getting a woman's voice saying "help."
Oh.
I know. It was so creepy too. The night that we were there, it was raining, so it was dark and rainy, and we were sitting out with umbrellas. It was probably close to midnight in a cemetery. It was probably the creepiest. Like you said earlier, I don't believe that cemeteries are haunted. Typically, I do not. This place is different. It's completely.
Feel like there has to be energy there.
There has to. Well, there's a difference though. Between energies and haunting. I feel though that this place is so close to the studios. And where they it's their environment, so maybe they don't leave. I feel completely different there than I've ever felt at any other cemetery. I feel like there's definitely spirit there. It feels like it, even in the middle of the day, let alone on a rainy night at midnight near Halloween.
But I don't want to go at midnight.
Well, I don't think you can. I think we were only allowed because he was an invited guest to do this event there, and the event was still going on inside the building, so they allowed us to go out. There was a guard there, and we told him what he was doing. And he had a limousine and stuff he took us there in a limousine, and the limousine driver kind of crept along and was near where we had walked to. It was an experience, though, for sure. It was probably one of the coolest. I mean, we both know. I don't know that we've ever mentioned on the podcast that we belong to a paranormal investigation team. I don't typically take part in the investigations. My job solely is research. So this was one of my experiences where I got to be part of a team that was actually investigating. It was only at the cemetery, and it was only at my discretion where I wanted to go in the cemetery because they knew I knew it. Mm-hmm. But it was probably one of the coolest experiences I've ever had as far as ghost hunting goes. And maybe it was the rain, maybe it was the almost midnight and almost Halloween that made it even more significant. But the help was so clear, and it kept happening, and it was clearly the same voice. over and over again. And on a Frank's box, it's not usually the same voice. You hear different voices saying different things. We numerous times heard the word help over and over, or the same voice. So it was cool. About Virginia Rappe, though, she is one of the other people that are known to haunt the Hollywood Forever Cemetery. She's buried there. The circumstances of Rappe's death was in 1921. It became a Hollywood scandal and was covered widely and sensationalized by the media at the time. During a party held on Labor Day on September 5th, 1921, Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle, he was known as Fatty Arbuckle in silent movies, and my dog before Dempsey was named Arbuckle after Fatty Arbuckle. He was a very well-known silent movie star. He had rented a number of suites at the St. Francis Hotel in San Francisco. He was there to celebrate a new contract with Paramount Studios. It was going to make him just a ton of money. He was already very wealthy. But he had rented this suites, these bunch of different suites, had tons of people come up from Hollywood to party with them for the weekend. Rappe was one of the people that had showed up at the parties. She was a model and silent movie extra. She wasn't well known in the movies yet, but she was well known in the group. They all knew each other. And she allegedly suffered some kind of trauma. She died on September 9th from a ruptured bladder that had happened during the party. And then she had a secondary infection that actually killed her. Rumors arose, supposedly, to besmirch her character, that Rappe had given birth to a child in Chicago, that she had had numerous abortions, and that that was proved false in the autopsy. But the exact events of the party are still unclear, with witnesses relating numerous versions of what happened. But it was alleged that Rappe had died as a result of a violent sexual assault by Arbuckle. I mean, he was 350 pounds or something. She was this teeny tiny little silent movie extra.
And he raped her?
Allegedly, he raped her. The problem with this was that the accuser was a lady named Maud Delmont, and she had brought Rappe to the party, and she was one of the ones that testified. And she was known for she had a police record for extortion and blackmail. Oh. So they think that she had, she didn't know Virginia was going to die. She didn't know that was going to happen. But I think that when it did happen, knowing that Fatty Arbuckle was yeah, he was tried 3 times for the exact same thing and every time found innocent. And it wasn't his character. He'd been in the industry for years before that. His wife stood by his side, they were actually going through a divorce at the time before this even happened. But she stood by his side, and he just didn't have the reputation for it. He wasn't that kind of person. And he wouldn't have needed to do that. Not needed, I know that. Sexual predators, I can't believe I just said that. It wasn't something he would have done or been known for. He just wasn't that kind of guy. And this Maud lady was definitely after the fact that he had just signed a $3 million contract back in 1921, you know? Mm-hmm. The equivalent of what was $3 million now. So it was just, the whole thing was really shady. Witnesses testified that she had suffered from previous venereal diseases. There were allegations that her death was brought on by health rather than an assault. After 3 manslaughter trials, Arbuckle was formally acquitted. His acquittal in the 3rd trial was accompanied by an unprecedented statement of apology from the jury, stating that the acquittal is not enough for Roscoe Arbuckle. We feel that a great injustice has been done to him. There's not the slightest proof to connect him in any way with the commission of a crime. Arbuckle's reputation and career was nevertheless ruined by the scandal. He never came back again. He ended up writing under a pseudonym. He would write movies. He did the silent movies, the comedy of errors, the crazy... But it ruined his career. It ruined his career. And they said that he didn't do it. But in the bottom line is she did die. And his case, by the way, has been studied by scholars and historians. First of all, you wouldn't be tried 3 times for the same crime.
They didn't have double jeopardy then?
You couldn't be tried. No, you could be tried over and over again, until found guilty. Until someone decided that enough is enough. But it ruined his career. But she did die, and people say that they can hear sobbing from the area of her grave, and tour guides warned people not to linger. Her boyfriend at the time, his name was Learman, he would sit for hours and days crying at her website. He missed her. She was beautiful, though. Her website, her gravesite. I was looking at the sign on the wall. He would sit at her gravesite for hours, grieving her loss. So people say today, like what happened to us, we heard help, help.
Yeah.
We heard crying. We heard help, help. So I don't know if it was her. I mean, where she's buried, it's really close to actually the water feature they have there. There's a million other people buried there, so who knows. The stages of Paramount Studios that are located closest to the cemetery report seeing spirits clothed in 30s and 40s garb. Additionally, they report hearing mysterious footsteps wander through the studios and equipment turning on and off right there back by the cemetery. And that located a few feet from the cemetery on the Lemon Grove side is one of the entrances into Paramount Studios. There's like a gate that goes to Paramount Studios. However, this one is often used by the studio's ghostly visitors. They say that guards at night will legitimately see shadows walking through the door. Which, to me, is not hard. Again, I don't typically think cemeteries are haunted, but if they're...
It has to do with the studios, and people probably died a lot on sets.
Theaters are and studios would be the same way. Theaters, I believe, are very, very haunted because of the high energy and the feelings and the emotions. Mm-hmm. And being that close to a studio and being a cemetery where the emotions are very, very high, I could see where the veil is very thin there.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense. But they said that there was a guard there that used to see the shadows walking through, and then he would actually see just heads poke through the fence and like look onto the cemetery side and then go back. So I don't know. Paramount Studios is very known for being haunted also. So I just think the proximity of the cemetery and that studio kind of create a huge thing. Well, maybe just the veil's thinner there. Maybe there's some kind of connection.
And you always, if you're going into a cemetery, you're thinking about death and people and lives, and so you're more open to seeing things as well.
Maybe the guards at night at the cemetery also report seeing the specter of Rudolph Valentino. Now, this is one I don't really believe. I could see the Black Lady repeating itself, not necessarily an intelligent haunting, but sort of a loop of something happening. Mm-hmm. I don't believe that Rudolph Valentino would hang out at his grave unless he's just pissed that he's in the wall and not in his own building. Marion Davies. Yeah, Marion Davies, she was a movie star too during the 20s and 30s. 20s. She was the lover of William Randolph Hearst, the whole Hearst Castle. Yeah. She has a beautiful building. Her own little building. And so many times when I had been there were flowers on it. There were brand new fresh flowers on her grave, and it always said, "From your loving great nephew," or something like that. I never found out who that was. But people, the night guards probably see the most. They said that, that Clifton Webb, and I know you won't know who Clifton Webb is, but he was a big actor in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. 50s mostly. He was the original Belvedere in 3 different movies in 48 and 51, and he haunts the Abbey of Solms there. They have lights, strange lights, not like the lights go on. They have floating lights that happen in that hallway. There's drafts. Not really. They don't call it orbs. Like a light will go on and go off. And light will go on and go off. And then drafts of cold air, smells of cologne, and whispered voices in that mausoleum. Which that one is really creepy too, though. There's 2 or 3 different big mausoleums where they have like the different crypts. There's one that always kills me. It's a whole family that's buried there, and they all died on the same day, and I've never been able to find out who they were. And that drives me crazy, but it's in the Clifton Webb hallway. You can just read on the wall. They have all the different crypts on the wall, and it's all the same last name, and it's all different ages, and they all died on the same day. But I've never been able to find out who they were. I can't find them anywhere. Of course I've tried. Yeah. I don't know. That bugs me every time I go there.
What's the name?
I don't remember now. But I saw it again when I went. I just went a couple months ago when my friend was here from Wisconsin. We took her daughter there to check it out. And that hallway is just really cold. I mean, it's cold because it's marble and stuff too. Mm-hmm. But it's something about that hallway is just really, really, really creepy. And I don't know why. They say that he haunts his house too. So maybe he just floats back and forth. He was sort of flamboyant. Always wanted to be the center of attention. Probably doesn't get much attention at his house, so he hangs out at the mausoleum. Mm-hmm. Gets more attention. I don't know. So whether you believe cemeteries are haunted or not, a trip to Hollywood Forever Cemetery won't disappoint. The stars of Hollywood, old and new, never really rest. Like a light left on a stage, their stars don't dim. And if you're lucky, you may catch a glimmer of one of those stars. Thank you for listening to this episode of Haunting History Podcast. Be sure to follow and comment on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. at Haunting History Podcast, and don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen. Visit our website at hauntinghistorypodcast.com for more information on each episode. Until next time, I'm Kat, and remember, the living are far scarier than any ghost.